Good morning. I'm Lindsay Thomas Jr. I am the Chief Communications Officer for the National Deer Association, which is a nonprofit wildlife conservation organization. And this morning I'm going to speak to you about effective social media communication for the reluctant wildlife professional. I'm not a trained wildlife professional myself. I'm a journalist, but I am passionate about informing the public about wildlife science in my area, particularly deer. And I'm especially interested in helping other wildlife professionals and scientists engage with the public on the internet. As many of you probably know, the internet and social media can be places full of misinformation about wildlife and about the wildlife management and the other practices that we all promote. That shouldn't be a reason to keep you off there. It should be a reason you should go there. We need more scientists and wildlife professionals on social media and on the internet as counter programming to the misinformation. We need you sharing the knowledge you have and the management information that you hold that can help the public better understand wildlife, impacts related to this conference and the issues that you deal with. So we need you out there working on this. And that's what my talk is going to help you do. Now, oftentimes when I talk with wildlife professionals about this subject, some will say, well, my agency won't allow me to go personally onto social media and talk about what I do. That may be true, but my talk will still be helpful to you because you can still go to the PR people, the communications team, whoever it is for your agency who does operate the social media and web pages, and provide them with the knowledge you have and the facts and the information you need to get out to the public. Many times I see agency social media and it's clear to me that the PR teams are not always in contact with the knowledgeable experts in their agency. So bridge that gap, supply them with some of the information. They'll appreciate that support. And my talk will help you understand some of the types of information that you can help disseminate, whether you do this personally on social media or assist your agency's communications PR team. So let's jump right into some quick pointers for how to get started with social media, whether you're going to do this yourself or in some other way. First is define your mission, define it very carefully. What is it you want to achieve on social media? What is it you're trying to transmit? Build it around your areas of expertise. The more well-defined your mission and the more unique it is to you and your expertise, the easier it will be and the faster it will grow. My area of expertise as a journalist is deer science, deer hunting, deer management, and that's what I focus on to assist my organization in educating deer hunters. Now, of course, as just like with you, many times the science and the facts out there aren't accepted by everyone in your audience. That's okay. I find that many deer hunters don't want to accept some of the science that we share. That's all right. You're going to put that information out there. You're going to keep repeating it. And over time, you're going to begin to change the dynamic of knowledge out there. Another one is define and remember your audience. Who is it you want to speak to? Is it going to be other scientists? Is it the suburban public? Is it wildlife enthusiasts, students, hunters like my group? You need to know who that is and think of them every time you're sharing information. A lot of times, you know, you've heard of science Twitter. Many times what I find that to be is scientists talking to scientists. That might be your goal. You might want to be out there networking with other wildlife professionals on social media, sharing shop talk and educating each other. And if that's what you want to do, great. But if what you want to do is educating the public, then simply engaging with other scientists is not moving you forward. Think of your audience as the non-informed public, the public who interacts with media, who deals with wildlife damage but doesn't understand it or understand the wildlife. If that's your audience, keep them in mind in what you post and what you share. Don't end up simply in conversations with other professionals. That can be fine again, but remember your audience. And then third, your goal is transmit digestible bites of information regularly and repeat. This is it. Define your mission, define your audience, and then start transmitting digestible bites of information on a regular basis. And simply doing this, you will have an impact. Choosing a platform, you know the big ones. Facebook, of course, has more users than anybody. YouTube has about 2.3 billion, Instagram at 1.2 billion, TikTok 689, one of the new players in the field, Twitter down there at 353 million. But you should consider all of these. Facebook, of course, has the biggest audience, but comes with some strings attached. You have the whole friends thing, where if you have a personal account, people have to ask to become your friend on Facebook. And you can set up a business page that is different than a personal account where anyone can follow you. But then Facebook's algorithm sometimes comes into that and often prevents audiences from seeing content that pages share. So there are some complications with Facebook. If you're already on it, you use a lot and you're familiar with it, it might be the way you want to go, but I might have some different suggestions for you. YouTube, of course, if you're talented in video production and can edit and produce your own videos with your iPhone, think about being on YouTube. There's a little more time involvement in editing and producing your video content, but if that's where you're talented, be on YouTube. Instagram for those who are more photo oriented, and of course on Instagram you can post short videos as well. So areas of information and communicators that lend themselves to photo communication, think about being on Instagram. TikTok, I put the curmudgeon emoji there next to it because my daughters are on Instagram, on TikTok. They enjoy it, they share the videos with me, but I don't really understand it. But there's a lot of people on it, and certainly an audience that can be reached. If you use TikTok, understand it, and could participate there, there's an audience to be reached and a way to reach them with wildlife information. In general, TikTok seems to be more music oriented, humor oriented. If you're talented in those areas and it comes naturally to you, by all means, use it. Twitter is the lowest here with only 353 million users. But I find it to be a very good starting arena. It's a true microblog where you're sharing small bits of information on a very regular basis. It can be a good training ground for you. If you're new to all of these platforms, using them to share information with the public, I'd suggest you start with Twitter, and you may remain there as I have. One of the things I've found is that even though Twitter has a smaller audience, our website, Twitter is a big player in driving traffic back to our website, bigger than Instagram, even though we have more followers on Instagram, and really competes with Facebook in terms of the amount of traffic it drives to our website, even though we have far more followers on Facebook. So Twitter can be a good platform, particularly if you're just getting started, to train yourself in regular communication of factoids for the public about wildlife. So let's talk about cross-posting. You can be on multiple platforms. And by doing this, you can save time posting to one or more of these platforms at the same time. Let's talk about how that works. If you have a YouTube video, those work well shared on Twitter. Users can actually watch the video in the Twitter feed and never leave Twitter. And then of course the view is recorded on your YouTube channel. So posting YouTube videos on Twitter works well. Instagram posts to Facebook works well. As you know, Facebook owns Instagram. When you go to post something on Instagram, you'll see the option to also post on your Facebook page at the same time. A good way to kill two birds with one stone. That works well. YouTube to Facebook does not work as well. Facebook views YouTube as a competitor, and so they generally suppress YouTube videos in their algorithm. You generally get less traction with YouTube videos. If you're going to make a video, it's better to just post it natively in Facebook on your Facebook account or Facebook page. And then sharing Facebook and Instagram posts to Twitter can work. There are automated buttons that allow you, when you post on Facebook or Instagram, to share that to your Twitter feed as a link. The problem is within Twitter, you're required to leave Twitter to see those links. And to Twitter users, I kind of view this as sort of phoning it in. It's faking it. If your account on Twitter is merely Facebook and Instagram links, you won't build a whole lot of loyalty or following on Twitter. It's really not worth your time. If you're going to use Twitter, you need to be there in real time and engaged and active, perceived as being there by other Twitter users. So creating social media posts is really writing, whether you're writing an essay or writing a video script or writing a Twitter post or whatever. It's all the same writing skills. So let's talk about some writing tips. You want to keep it fun, casual, colloquial, and conversational, particularly if the general public is your target audience. If you need to, draft your social media posts off the platform, open up a Word doc and write some short, impactful social media posts, save them there. You'll reuse them from time to time. So maybe save a document somewhere where you're compiling these. When you're writing, relax. No one's going to see this until you're ready. Step away from your professional, your college, your research voice if you need to, and relax a little bit and think about just having conversational communication with the general public. And then, of course, avoid college words. As a journalist who follows scientists and researchers, I'm familiar with all the words. I've had to learn what these mean. I've had to learn that you call fawns neonates. And don't do that when talking with the public. It's just a fawn. So think about those college words that come naturally to you in talking with other scientists. Try to avoid those in talking with the public. Be consistent in your social media activity, but be efficient. If you can't think of anything to post, go back to your mission. What is your mission? My mission is Dear Science. I can always stop and go, what's some Dear Science somebody might find interesting that's relevant today? Think of your FAQs that you receive, the frequently asked questions that you get from your constituency in your daily work. What are those frequently asked questions? Those can be great material for regular social media posts. You don't have to be creative. You don't have to be humorous or witty. Just have good information and share it regularly in small bites. All of us as wildlife professionals and interested wildlife enthusiasts have that information at hand from our experiences, from studying the science and the research. Compile that stuff, share it with the public. Let's talk about drafting and scheduling. Many times when I talk with wildlife professionals and encourage them to get on social media, they say, I don't have the time to do that. You don't have to do social media in the moment. You don't have to do it in real time. In the morning of a busy business day, you don't have to stop in the middle of what you're doing and say, oh, I've got to do a social media post. This stuff can be drafted and scheduled ahead of time. Twitter, Instagram, even Facebook all allow you to save drafts. You go into Twitter, you write a post, you're not ready to hit send right then because it's midnight on a Saturday, hit save and save it in your drafts. Then weekday morning, which can be good times for social media sharing, you open up your drafts, you hit send, it didn't take you a lot of time. So I encourage drafting for several reasons, and this is one of them, helping you manage your time in social media. The screenshot here is from our NDA Buffer account. Buffer is one of the products out there that allows you to pre-schedule your social media activity, and it sends these for you. What you're looking at here is a weekly calendar of social media posts that are already scheduled or have already been sent, and Buffer sends these for us. So when you're drinking your coffee on a Sunday morning, or you've got a quiet afternoon, whenever you have some time, sit down, draft, and pre-schedule your social media so that during your busy week, you're not have to worry about it. It's being sent for you. Hootsuite is another one of the platforms like this. There are others. You can explore them. For some, there can be costs, minor costs to owning these accounts, but they can be extremely helpful, again, in drafting, scheduling, and sending without even you thinking about it. The other good thing about drafting and scheduling is it gives you a chance to revise. I heavily encourage revising. It's really not, unless you just have a great idea right now and it's got to be sent right now, it's oftentimes a good idea to save things, draft them, save them, and review them later. Set it aside, then proofread and revise. As you know, many times when you write something, put it away, walk away from it and come back later, from that fresh perspective, you find typos you made, you find rough sentences that aren't very clear, and you can clarify them. So drafting, saving, and revising is always a good idea, because in the end, you want your social media posts to be clear, to have punch, and to be as brief as possible. Saving, revising, and proofreading helps you do this. In general, try to eliminate the word salad, the redundancies, the words you overuse, like that, and in order. Don't say in order to, just say to. Go for clarity, brevity, and punch. Simple but hard-hitting messages often perform better than convoluted, wordy, or complex messages. If you want help here, I recommend the book On Writing Well by William Zinsser. Here's a quote from him. Examine every word you put on paper. You'll find a surprising number that don't serve any purpose. This book is a great guide to writing more clearly, more effectively, and more concisely. And if you need help there, I encourage you to check that one out. Don't try to go viral. I love this quote from Fred Rogers. I wonder if we might pledge ourselves to remember that what life is really all about. Not to be afraid that we're less flashy than the next, not to worry that our influence is not that of a tornado, but rather that of a grain of sand in an oyster. This is a great quote to remember about going viral. Don't try to be a tornado. Be the grain of sand in the oyster that's having a small but daily and consistent effect and impact on things over time, and that over the long haul builds to something very important. Yes, it is possible to go viral. It's very difficult to make that happen. I've had bosses in the past who have told me, hey, do a video and make it go viral. Anyone who's experienced with social media will tell you it's impossible to make something go viral. It is very random. It's very difficult to explain what makes things go viral. Often you will find things you do that suddenly become very popular. You had no idea it was going to, and you can't explain why it did. I can't either. So don't worry about going viral. Again, be the grain of sand in the oyster. Do something on a consistent basis. Every day, share something. Sometimes you'll get lucky and something you shared will be shared widely and go viral. If you did, great. It's kind of like winning the lottery. If not, don't worry about it. Just keep being, again, the grain of sand in the oyster. Let's talk about some best management practices. One of the most important ones for wildlife professionals and scientists is don't repeat myths and misconceptions. And I'm going to go to science when I tell you this. Have been some very good human dimension studies on this. Here's the title of one article you could look up and read: Making the Truth Stick and the Myths Fade, Lessons from Cognitive Psychology. What these folks have found, you're doing focus groups and other studies. They bring people in who hold a particular myth in their head. They tell them that that myth is not true and provide them information. And a couple of weeks later, ask that person, what was the truth I shared with you? They repeat the myth and say, yeah, this myth was the truth. What they've learned is these misconceptions are in the people's minds, embedded kind of like a weed that's taken root, and simply mentioning the myth reinforces that in their subconscious, and it doesn't root it out. And so as time goes by, that myth is still there and still perceived as the truth and the fact. So don't repeat myths and misconceptions. Simply state the truth and the fact that you want to replace those myths and misconceptions that are out there. Here's a couple of quotes from that article I mentioned. Participants who had been told 3 times that a statement was false were more likely to accept it as true than were those who had only been told once. Repeat correct information, not the misinformation one wants to undermine. So we see these things out there. You see blogs that say, top 10 myths about whatever it might be. That's not a good idea to approach it that way. It's not a good idea to say, here's a myth and here's the truth I'm going to share with you. Again, don't mention the myth or misconception. In the wildlife field, we can all name those myths and misconceptions that are out there. In deer hunting, I can tell you a whole bunch of things deer hunters believe that are not true. We don't repeat those myths and misconceptions in talking about them. We simply state the scientific truth and fact and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And over time, those facts will replace the myths and misconceptions as you work on that. Here's another best management practice that I think is very important. Reduce anxiety and build trust. Again, this comes from science. And here's an article, again, I suggest that you look up. How media coverage of epidemics helps raise anxiety and reduce trust. This study was done in the context of Ebola. Basically, what they found was that reporting in the news media that was frightening, that was scary, that was ominous about Ebola tended to drive people to sources of misinformation, sources of better news. If it sounded like Ebola was bad and scary and wasn't something you could do anything about, it tended to drive people to sources of misinformation that had a better story, that had a brighter story, that said this isn't so bad, don't worry about it. And so this is something to remember in what we talk about. Here's a couple of quotes. Telling people about scary diseases without informing them about ways to protect themselves is a good way to cause anxiety and emotional distress, and a bad way to build trust in government health agencies. During an outbreak, in the absence of accurate information, people may look to alternative sources that are dangerously misleading. saying, for example, that Ebola can be cured using plants and herbs. I found that providing audiences with articles that include information about risks and solutions, both individual and organizational, can improve people's intention to comply with health recommendations during an epidemic. In my area of work, we see very many parallels with chronic wasting disease in deer. And so this has been very informative to us in working to educate hunters about CWD. We're not trying to frighten them, not trying to make this sound like something that's an impossible problem. There are ways that hunters can help fight CWD. That's what we want to share with them. There is hope. And that's the message that we go with. Here are a couple of examples on the left. An article we published shortly after I read that article in that study. Every deer hunter can take these steps to fight CWD. It is action items. It is a sense of hope. There are things that all deer hunters can do to help with this problem, and here's what they are. Here's what you can do. On the right is an example going back to sharing the facts instead of myths and misconceptions. 9 facts about targeted removal for fighting CWD. Any of you who are familiar with what targeted removal is know that there are a lot of myths and misconceptions out there among deer hunters about that practice. Here we don't mention those. We're mentioning simply the facts. That's what we want to share. Here's another example, going back to sharing action items, sharing information that gives people hope and a way that they can help. Report sick deer quickly. If you see or harvest a deer that acts strangely or appears sick, call your state wildlife agency. If we find CWD in the early stages, we can stop it. So again, this type of information provides hope. It provides a sense that there's not simply, this is not simply, we're not doomed. There is a fight. There is a hope here that we can win it and you can do something to help. So in your arenas, whatever area of wildlife damage or wildlife interaction with the public might be, you'll find parallels to this and can use these guidelines. Here's an example from my own social media that I shared recently that again, is putting this into action, talking about feral hogs, talking about the growing problem and how they're expanding their range rapidly, which is scary information. But again, there's something the public can do, and here it is. Call the conservation officer. If you see somebody hauling live hogs somewhere, it's probably illegal. Call and report that. So again, there's an action item that can help with wildlife damage. Let's talk about some other best management practices. When you're on social media, don't do politics or the culture wars. I do see some scientists out there on social media who have decided that they're just going to take a stand on politics and let you know exactly where they are. That's fine if that's the way you want to be and that's how you want to do it. That's your choice. But understand that you're polarizing your audience. You're polarizing your followers automatically by doing that. And those who don't agree with your politics aren't going to listen to you and aren't going to follow you. From my point of view, there are deer hunters that vote all kinds of different ways. I want all of them to listen to me and accept the science about deer that I'm here to share. So I don't do politics. I'm simply here to talk about deer hunting and deer science. So keep that in mind. Don't drunk tweet. Obviously, that's a pretty obvious one. Be responsible in what you're sharing. So be careful about when you share it. If you craft something for social media, you're looking at your draft and you're thinking, is that appropriate? If you have to ask yourself that question, don't post it. Wait, maybe get someone else's opinion. If you're sitting on the fence about that, don't share it. Many times, folks are out there sharing scientific information. They think it's useful, but can get themselves into hot water by not realizing something the way they worded something or something they said was not necessarily appropriate. Not too long ago, a couple of years ago, Neil deGrasse Tyson got himself in hot water over this, sharing some information about ways that people can die every day. And it was in the context of a mass shooting that happened. He got in a lot of hot water over it. And as he said later, I realized the facts I shared were true, but not helpful in the context of that issue. And sometimes you can draft something that's true, but not helpful in a social context. So again, stop and think about the context in which you're sharing this information. Is it inappropriate? Is it offensive to someone? If you have to ask yourself whether it is or not, don't post it. Ask others for help and amplification. What I'm talking about here is, in whatever social media platform you choose, There are going to be accounts out there, your own agency, your own professional group, your peers who are out there and active and have large followings already. Ask them to amplify your work. Ask them to share your Twitter, your tweets, retweet you, share your Facebook posts, to share your YouTube videos, share your Instagram posts, to tag you in their posts. There's lots of different ways that different social media accounts can help each other elevate each other's profiles with their followings. So reach out to the people you know in your professional networks who are already active on social media and ask for amplification. That's a way to rapidly grow your following and reach more people. Finally, just repeat. Return to important ideas and facts and truth again and again. Just because you shared a particular fact last month doesn't mean you have to wait several more months or weeks or years to share it again. You can do it weekly. The thing to remember about social media, it's kind of like a stream that's flowing by. And at any moment, different fish are swimming down that stream. It's the same with your audience on social media. You might make a cast into that stream right now, but an hour later, there's going to be a different audience flowing by in that stream. And so just because you said something in a particular area yesterday, sharing it again today means a different entire audience might see it and you might gain engagement. Oftentimes what I'll find is you share on a particular topic area one day or one week, and it gets a relatively low level of engagement. You come back a week or a month later and you share the almost the same exact information, suddenly it takes off. So it's always worth repeating. At different days or times of the week, you'll get different levels of engagement. Keep repeating to always be effective and reach different audiences at different times. This can also be a way when you're stuck and you haven't come up with any content to share today, go back and look at what you were sharing a year ago. Find something you shared in the past that worked well and reshare it. Let's talk about dealing with trolls. This can be a big area. When you go on social media and you post, you're going to end up finding folks who reply who don't like what you had to say. This is especially true in certain areas that are controversial. In the world I work in, chronic wasting disease is a controversial one. Came across this meme. If you become lost in the woods, start talking about CWD, someone will show up to argue with you. This is true in many areas. I know that some of you work in areas, trap, neuter, and release, things like that, where anytime you talk about that, it's going to generate controversy and you're going to get some trolls, some people who are there simply to cause problems and be a headache to you. How do you deal with them? So let's talk about that. To start with, you're going to get a range of responses to the information you put out there. There are going to be legitimate questions. Responding to them is an opportunity to emphasize, reiterate, or expand on an idea. Off-point or irrelevant questions, you can ignore those if you don't have time. Questions can help you improve your message crafting and editing to be more clear in the future. So going in and looking at the responses that your social media posts are getting is a good idea. It helps you keep in tune with what's being said, can help you improve your messaging in the future. And again, by engaging with some of your people and responding, it's an opportunity to, again, emphasize, reiterate, or expand on those ideas. I talk with many in wildlife professions who go into social media and they'll make a post, they'll get a couple of negative responses, and they'll say, man, can you believe that? They want to focus on that. That's what they want to talk about. They can't seem to get it out of their head, those negative replies they got. But when you go and look at their post and you look at the analytics, several hundred or thousands of people saw that post, several hundred clicked like. And so the overall engagement that they got was fairly large from people who didn't respond at all, didn't have a comment, didn't click like, and even the likes often far outnumber the negative comments. And yet it's the 2 or 3 negative comments that consume these people's time and their mind. Don't let that happen. Focus on the ones who saw your information and went about their business. That's what you want to do. You're putting your information out there for the public to see. They take it, they ingest it, and they go on about their day. Keep doing that. So don't let negative responses consume you. Post and drop is a tactic you can use if you find yourself consumed by negative comments. This came from the comedian Joe Rogan, who has, of course, a popular podcast and is big on social media. He said in the past, his tactic is post and drop, meaning make the social media post on your phone, drop your phone, and walk away. Don't look at what people say in reply. You've put your information out there. It's for them to mull over and ingest. You go about your business and start crafting your next social media post. So that can be a tactic, particularly if you don't have the time to engage and answer questions. Loud and rude challengers, I say kill them with kindness if you have the time. If you choose, respond with interest, manners, and helpfulness. Remember that sometimes when someone is being nasty or rude on social media, you don't know what's going on. They might have had a very bad day today. They might have just found out they have cancer. Their dog might have just got killed in a car in the road. They might have just lost their job. You can't know. Assuming that that's what it's about reminds you that this is about them, it's not about you. They might be having a bad day, and that might be why they're being rude. So again, this is about them, it's not about you. And responding with helpfulness, kindness can often turn that enemy or that person who's angry at you into a new supporter. So sometimes think about doing that. Simply ignoring people also works. At some point, responding gives someone more validation than they deserve. So think about case by case whether you want to do that. Of course, some of these people are legitimate trolls. Don't waste your time neutralizing them by ignoring and moving on, continuing to transmit to a listening audience. Remember that that's your goal. So don't get bogged down by these folks. In those truly problematic cases, block these people and move on. If these people are a continuous problem, don't hesitate to simply block them. Blocking is available in all the social media platforms. It prevents these people from seeing your post, engaging with your posts, and simply allows you to move on from them and keep them out of the picture. Bottom line is, though, whatever you do with negative comments, don't let them get in your head. Stay focused on all the people who saw your information without comment or who gave positive feedback. They always outnumber the negative comments. Go into your engagement and your analytics that are available on your social media channel and look, and you'll see that way more people saw your post or clicked like on your post or shared your post than commented and made a negative comment. So don't allow those comments to consume you. We often get the sense that somehow those negative comments are undermining our messaging. They are not. The average viewer out there, give them credit for having the common sense to know that most of those people replying with negative comments are not representative of the whole and of the general public and of the truth. So simply continue transmitting the truth. And that's a good place to stop. Continue transmitting the truth. I encourage you to get on social media, get out there, get involved, share the truth and the facts and the science about wildlife with the general public. It's enjoyable. Have a good time with it. Below is my contact information. Please, this is a rather, I know, quick hit presentation, and there's a lot of questions here, a lot of angles and things we could talk about here. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. Email me. Here's my email address. I'll be happy to talk with you. Let's get on the phone and assist in any way I can. I'm always willing to assist wildlife professionals and scientists when they want to engage the public and share their science in an effective way. And there's my social media accounts as well as those of the National Deer Association. Again, we're a nonprofit. If you're a deer hunter or deer enthusiast, I encourage you to join the NDA and become a member. Thank you for your time. I've been honored to be here for the conference, and please let me know if you have any questions.